sclerosis. And we are very fortunate to have with us tonight Andi Billington, who's got a impressive career in counseling and as a psychologist, and she can walk us through the emotions and the strategies to deal with these emotions when we are faced with a diagnosis of a chronic condition. Thank you, Andi.
Well, welcome to our webinar, everyone. Welcome to those, whether you have had MS for a while or whether you're newly diagnosed. And I do hope there's family watching, because I think this might be helpful for you as well. We're going to be talking about ways of coping with MS. And I'm not an expert on MS, and I don't have MS myself. My connection is my mother. She was diagnosed in the early 1960s. Her diagnosis, of course, turned our lives upside down, and MS was a very unwelcome house guest in our family home for many years, about 26 years actually, in our family home. When my mother was diagnosed, as I said, it turned our lives upside down. And I saw a picture the other day when I was preparing this webinar, and it reminded me actually of how we felt as a family at the time. So, Luminita, could you put that first slide up, please? Luminita's doing the slides for me. I apologize for the quality of this picture, because it was just in an article I was reading on grief. But you can see the figure at the top of the hill. So we felt we'd rather gone off track, and we were at the top of the hill looking around at the new normal. So just for a moment, when you look at this picture, whereabouts are you perhaps on this this visual? Are you at the top of the hill, perhaps looking around at the new normal, perhaps feeling a bit overwhelmed and alone? Or are you somewhere near the bottom of the hill? Or are you, like our MS comedians, are you back on the track? So my family and I were up there, and I don't remember how long we were up there for, but I do remember at some point we had to say to ourselves, look, this MS is not going to go away. And we just had to learn to live with it and accept it. Because by accepting the diagnosis and being able to say, look, it is what it is, warts and all, we were actually able to take back some control over our lives, and it empowered us to take some steps down the hill and get back on the road again. Although the road actually looked quite a bit different, of course. So with yourself, I mean, how long you stay at the top of that hill is, of course, your decision and your decision alone. But what I've done is I've put together what I'm going to call stepping stones, 4 stepping stones, or 4 ways of caring for both our physical and mental health that will empower us, build resilience, and help us to get down the hill and back on track. They're not new ideas, and for most of us, they'll just be reminders of how to care for ourselves. They're just there to help us on the journey down. So, Luminita, could we have that second visual, please? Yeah, thank you. So here are the stepping stones. First of all, expressing our feelings, being kind to ourselves. Secondly, building a support network, that's connecting with others. Thirdly, focusing on our health and well-being, that's about caring for ourselves, mainly our bodies. And 4, managing our time, which is about taking charge of our routine. So let's look at them one by one and put some skills and techniques in place to help us achieve each one. We'll call them tools. So I invite you to open up your own toolbox, and we'll fill it with tools and how to manage these steps. So let's turn to our first stepping stone, which is about expressing our feelings and being very kind to ourselves. People often don't link MS with grief and loss. But I imagine if you've been newly diagnosed that you have many losses at the moment. Perhaps you've had to give up your job. Perhaps you've had to give up some friends or activities. Maybe you're grieving for the past that you won't have anymore, or for the future with all the changes taking place. So it's very important to look at our feelings and to talk about them. Because by bottling our feelings up, we know that can lead to depression, anxiety, possible flare-ups, and an increase in our symptoms. So, very important to talk with people, and if you can, to write your feelings down. I had a client some time ago, she just lost her husband, but she came into me very stoic, said she had no emotions about it, didn't feel anything. So we talked for a while, and then I gave her some paper and some colored pens, and she looked at it for a while, and then she took the black crayon and she scribbled dark black lines all over the page. When we explored it later, she recognized that actually she was angry. How dare he leave me to cope on my own? And of course, once that feeling had come out, the feelings behind it were very clear. Some of them are very deep grief, of course. So the most common emotions associated with any common chronic illness are shock, denial, anger, guilt, depression, and anxiety and stress. So shock, denial, anger, guilt, depression, anxiety, and stress. So I asked you a question, all those who are watching, including family here. Have you experienced any of these emotions lately? So have a wee think about that. If we could have the diagram up, Luminita, of the grief, the stages of grief. There we go. I don't know whether you can see that, everyone, but we talk about the stages of grief, as I'm sure you've heard before. Down the left side, you'll see this lovely linear curve, and you'll see many of the emotions that we've just mentioned on the curve. Coming up to the right-hand side, toward new patterns, new beginnings, new relationships, and acceptance of the diagnosis. But of course, life is not like that, is it? It's not a linear curve. If we look on the other side, where it says my experience, you can see what grief is all about. It's a roller coaster. There's no time frame to grief, and it's a journey in itself. So this is what you're probably experiencing now. You're a bit all over the place. Maybe one day you're in denial of the diagnosis, and the next day you're angry, and the next day you have another feeling. So you really need to be very kind to yourself when you're grieving. Many of you probably have lost loved ones, as I have. So we know what the feelings of grief are like, but also when you lose your health, that's a big loss as well. So what tools can we put in place to help with any or all of these emotions? So with depression, let's start with depression or feeling low. How low are you? Put yourself on my wee scale. Let's just see. So 10 is feeling pretty good, coping with life pretty well. 0 is suicidal. I want to take my own life. I don't want to live anymore. So no matter where you are on that scale, really good to talk to someone you trust. But if you're a 2 or below, then this is serious. Time to talk, time to go to your doctor, time to get some help. And if there's really no one that you feel you can trust enough to talk to, then please use the helpline numbers, which I've put up on the screen now. They're 24/7, and they will get you the help you need. So have compassion for yourself. Allow yourself to feel if you're feeling low, and do talk. Let's look at some other tools then. For example, when you're feeling low, find one thing that comforts you. Can be something very simple. Can we take that slide off for a second, Luminita? Thanks. Okay, so find one thing that comforts you. Can be something very simple. For example, I had a client some years ago. She had just lost her son to suicide. So you can imagine she was overwhelmed in her grief. So overwhelmed that she couldn't think of anything that comforted her, no matter how much we brainstormed together. So she left our session, she went home. Oh, that's changed the screen. She went home. She, a few days later, she went to put out her rubbish outside. It started to rain, and as she looked up, she felt the raindrops on her face and immediately felt a sense of calm. So I invite you now just to use your senses. You know, what comforts you? Something you hear, something you see, something you touch, something you smell, something you taste. What is it that comforts you in the moment when you're feeling low? Do you have a special place to go? It can be a chair, can be a room. Where do you feel that sense of calm? If it's, for example, a place, and it may be the beach, and you can't get to the beach, then I invite you to use your imagery again. Sit in a comfy chair. Close your eyes. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you taste? What do you smell on the beach? So transport yourself there. Now the tool, breathing. You know, everyone talks about breathing, but seriously, we know breathing can help us. We know it can calm us. We know how important it is, because we tend to just flap these things at the side, don't we, when we breathe? But when we breathe intentionally, we push out the belly, raise the diaphragm, expand the rib cage, take a full breath in, and then as you breathe out, the same, just push all the air out. We can do breathing at any time in any place. No one needs to know we're doing it. So we have what we call in the world of grief, a compassionate breath, which is a very simple breath. So you put your hand over your heart, so you're having compassion for yourself, and you breathe in for 4, hold the breath for 4, and breathe out for 6. And as you breathe out, you just put gentle pressure on your chest to push the air out whilst you're having compassion for yourself. Another idea would be to think of someone you're grateful for. Could be someone or something, or a child, a grandchild, maybe a pet or something. I always wear my mother's bracelet, for example. That gives me comfort and keeps me calm. What keeps you going, in other words? And maybe write a gratitude list. That's write down the things you're grateful for so you can actually see them written. And really good to journal too about your thoughts and how you're feeling. What are your symptoms now? Are you feeling sore and tired? Are your limbs hurting? Are you in pain? So have compassion for yourself. So for example, if it's your hands that are hurting, put some lovely smelly moisturizer on your hands, or cover them to keep them warm, or wrap them in an ice pack if you really want to cool them down. So have compassion for yourself. If you're hot, then wrap yourself in a cool sheet that's been in the fridge for a while, or a nice warm blanket if you want to get warm. Really important. And use your self-talk. You know, when you're doing the breathing, as you breathe out, say to yourself, I'm okay. This is temporary. There will be better days ahead, or whatever it is that encourages you and comforts you. Do things that you love, do things that make you laugh, watch comedies, particularly our MS comedians, they are very funny. And I'm going to talk about exercise a bit later, but it is very good for anxiety and depression. You may have to force yourself out of that chair or off the couch or on your bed. Get yourself up, sit outside in the sun, which is hard to find in Auckland, but sit in the sun if you can, breathe, And then if walking is too hard for you, you can just do some stretching in your chair. So you're sitting outside, and you're raising your arms and lifting your legs. This is going to be hugely beneficial for you, even though you don't feel like doing it. Okay, so a word on anxiety and stress. This is particularly important. It's particularly important for those that have MS. It's hugely stressful. We know that. So again, put yourself on one of my wee scales. So 10 is feeling overwhelmed with anxiety, down to 0, which is totally relaxed. Well, I think in our busy world today, we never get down to 0, but we probably normally sit about a 3. But if you're up there at a 9 or a 10 or even an 8, we need to get that stress down. So breathe, do a breath, rate yourself again. You're still at a 9 or a 10. Okay, breathe again. Each time you exhale, comfort yourself, encourage yourself, tell yourself you're safe, and then rate yourself again on the scale. We want to try and get you down to about a 7 or even a 6. Okay, so very important to try and get your stress levels down. Other thing, if breathing doesn't work for you, many of my clients say breathing doesn't work. If it doesn't work, I tend to say to clients, do it anyway. But if it really doesn't work for you, then try mindfulness. You don't have to be trained to do mindfulness. It's just about being in the moment. So you're up at a 9 or a 10 with your anxiety, then look around the room. 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can see, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Use your senses again to distract yourself from the anxious feelings. It'll bring you down. Another idea is look around the room, choose a color. I'm going to choose red, and count the number of things you can see in your room that are red, or the color you choose. Another beautiful thing to do, look what I have. Okay, a tangerine. I love tangerines, so it's a beautiful thing to do because it uses all the senses. So smell it, look at it, and as you start to peel it, as the peel comes away from the fruit, you can listen to it, you can hear it breaking away. So we can use all our senses, and it gives us a chance to really focus on one thing. So it takes our mind off all the worries that are going on around our head and in our head. Another lovely thing to do if you're anxious, ground yourself. Just sit in your comfy chair. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Let your shoulders drop. Just go through the muscles in turn, just dropping them, relaxing, and then saying to yourself, I'm safe. Imagine the foundation underneath the floor. Everything's safe. Nothing's going to give way. So ground yourself. In extreme cases of anxiety, I have had people put their face in ice cold water, and that will shock you into bringing those stress levels down. So with anxiety and stress, be mindful, try and stay in the moment, take one day at a time, or as one of my clients corrected me a few weeks ago, he said, no, Andi, not 1 week, not 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time. So whatever it is for you, just don't cross bridges into the future. Try and stay in the moment. And be aware, unfortunately, that all these emotions might present themselves in your body, which means you may have some headaches, tummy aches, you may have heart palpitations, all sorts of things might be going on because of your grief, and they may be making your symptoms worse and could cause a flare-up. Unfortunately, this is the journey of grief. And for you guys with MS, you've actually got a double whammy. You're not only coping with having MS and the diagnosis and the symptoms, but you're also grieving at the same time. So be very, very kind to yourselves. I can't recommend these 2 books highly enough. Rebecca Balla, she's a counselor, but she's also an illustrator, and they are beautiful little books. If you could put that up for me, Luminita, that slide. Have you got that slide up of the books? Oh, okay. I'm not sure whether the slides come up or not. So, oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Words of Comfort is about tools for when you're grieving. A Note to Self is lovely. It's full of tools about anxiety and stress. So if you can see these lovely little pictures, she's done beautiful illustrations, so there's no heavy reading, and I highly recommend them. I picked my 2 books up from the warehouse, but you can order them online. I noticed there's $24 here, but I think I've had these a while, so they'll be probably up to about $28 now. So lots of tools, find what works for you. Second stepping stone now, let's turn to that. Now we've been able to, now that we've been able to comfort ourselves and express our feelings, it's time to build a support network. This is extremely important, connecting to others, because having people around us lowers our anxiety and our depression. It will raise our self-esteem, and it may improve our immune system as well. So really important. So first of all, reach out to family and friends. This may sound pretty obvious, but actually choose those that you can be real and honest with, not those that you feel you have to put on a brave face for every time you see them. Also, make sure they are good listeners. I think this is particularly important when you have MS, for those invisible symptoms, like bowel and bladder problems, fatigue. These are symptoms that people can't see. So we really need to have good listening people who we can talk to. Secondly, keep contact with your lovely community advisors in MS. They are not only beautiful people, but they're full of knowledge, and they will make sure you have everything you need. And they also have very big ears, so they will listen to you without judgment as well. Maybe join a peer support group. That's a group that also have MS as well, so you can make new friends. And family members, be sure to join your own group. Fourthly, maintain contact with those social and community groups that you had before your diagnosis. This is perhaps even more important for family members here, so that you can keep some normality and routine going in your household, and you can get yourself out and have a bit of life as well. Maybe your church group, maybe a sports group, craft group, whatever the groups are, really important to try and keep contact with them. And family, join your own carers group if there is one. Fifthly, you might want to volunteer for a cause that you're particularly passionate about, maybe the MS, volunteer at the MS Society if you're able to. Another idea is to do a random act of kindness to someone. Perhaps go and see your neighbor, make muffins for them. Just don't do what I did. I made muffins for my neighbor, and I was walking up to a house when I came across 3 teenagers that lived in another house nearby. And needless to say, my muffins didn't get to the neighbor that I had intended. But yeah, reach out. Lastly, connect with your doctor or specialist. Make a list of questions for them. Learn all you can about MS. Be your own expert. Do our online course maybe, which I'm doing, which I'm finding extremely helpful. Because I don't know about you, but when I don't understand something, if I research it and get a hold of it, then it allows me to take back control of it. So it's another way of taking back control over our diagnosis. Okay, anyone who has any ideas about how we might connect with others, please do put it in the chat room, and it might be really helpful for us. All right, so now that we've connecting with others, we come to our third stepping stone, which is focusing on our health. This is enormously important for all of us. Family members as well, of course. It's about caring for our bodies, because how we look after ourselves now will influence how we are in 5 or even 10 years' time. So let's have a checkup. We can do this by using the word please, Please. It's a good way to remember how we look after our bodies. So PL stands for physical. So how is your general health? Are you due for a doctor's checkup? Are you due for blood tests? Do you have any vaccines overdue? When did you last have a mammogram or a prostate check? When did you last see the dentist? When did you last see the dental hygienist? And of course, eye health is very important for people with MS. So these are sorts of preventive things that when we're overwhelmed with our symptoms and our MS diagnosis, we can quite often just push them to one side. So just keep a check on these things for your general health. So PL. PLE, of course, stands for exercise. This is way up there at the top as one of the main tools for anyone, and particularly for those with MS. Really important to, if you can, go out for a walk, do some yoga stretches, Pilates, any sort of flexibility training is excellent. A good place to start for this is your physiotherapist, because they will help you to know your limit and make a program for you in this way. And you can also perhaps be your own guide. So maybe go for a walk, see how you feel when you come back. If you're absolutely exhausted, then maybe the next day make it shorter, or if you're feeling good, then extend it a bit. So you can also be your own guide as well. So keep a diary and journal. It's always good to journal about your feelings and about anything to do with your life. So journal about it, keep a diary. Okay, A is for alcohol, Plea. A is for alcohol. Again, know your limits here. According to the US dietary guidelines, 1 drink a night is harmless, but regular or several drinks a night may worsen your neurological damage. So we need to keep an eye on alcohol intake with MS. S is for sleep. We know how important sleep is, and particularly with MS. I know with the night symptoms, I know my mother suffered from restless legs. It was very difficult for her to sleep. So be very well aware of this. We know also that lack of sleep can cause flare-ups and worsen symptoms. So really be careful with this. Sleeping tips, turn off your screens 2 hours before bed, warm drinks, breathing. Lovely thing to do when you're lying in bed, particularly if you have restless legs, is to, from the tip of your head to your toes, go through your whole body, just relaxing each muscle in turn. We call this total muscle relaxation until you get right down to your toes. Let everything just sink into the mattress. You can use your breathing at the same time. So when you breathe out, just let go into the mattress. It's a good way to get to sleep, and also it will help with restless legs. And of course, beware of caffeine. Keep the caffeine down. Try and stop the caffeine about 3 in the afternoon if you can. Okay, PLEAS, the last E is for eating, which is diet. How is your diet? Okay, best diet is, of course, one low in saturated fats, which we find in meat and dairy. Go heavy on the vegetables and fish if you can. I love olive oil. I put olive oil on everything, though I haven't tried it on ice cream yet. Probably won't. And sadly, of course, vegetables, fish, these are very expensive items. But look, we just have to do what we can here. And eat fruit that's high in magnesium, which is papaya, bananas, and kiwi if you like. Has anyone heard of this cookbook? If you could put a picture of that up, Luminita. It's called, it's by Ingrid Adelsberger, and it's called Overcoming MS. It's highly recommended. I don't have it, and I haven't tried any of the recipes, but I'd really be interested to know if any of you have it. and have tried any of the recipes. Drink lots of water. My doctor once told me that kidneys like to be busy, so do drink water, but clearly don't overdo that as well. And with extreme fatigue, look, if you're fatigued, it's very, very hard with your diet. But if you can, put a few meals in the freezer, just make vegetables, reach out to others for help, and don't beat yourself up. My daughter Heidi is a naturopath, and she always tells me, Mum, 90% good diet, 10% treats. So do treat yourself once in a while, comfort yourself, have compassion for yourself. For me, it's usually a chocolate biscuit or anything covered in chocolate. But yeah, be very, very kind to yourself and don't beat yourself up. Well, this brings us to our last stepping stone, which is about managing our time, taking charge of our routine. It's another very important step because good self-management improves our self-confidence, gives us a sense of achievement, and will reduce our stress and anxiety. So we're looking at building and managing a new routine around the new normal. That's what we're going to do. And this new routine, of course, will include expressing our feelings whilst connecting with others and using the please skills to care for our bodies at the same time. So it's about finding a balance between our first three stepping stones. Good management, good self-management as well is about listening to our bodies. So accepting our current energy levels. So if you're going through fatigue at the moment, when you wake up in the morning, put your feet by the bed on the floor and say to yourself, now, what are my energy levels today? What am I going to be able to manage? Do I need to delegate some of these tasks I've got an idea of, or do I need to put them off till the next day? So really important to recognize and to pace yourself, especially if you're fatigued. And include periods of rest if you can during the day. One of my clients said rest is a four-letter word. And it is, you know, if you're running a full-time job and a family, it is a hard word. But I encourage you to rest in the day. It doesn't mean lying down and going to sleep. It means if you're at work, finding a quiet place, a chair, and sitting there. If there's absolutely nowhere at work, then go to the toilet, sit on the toilet, and just go through your body, relaxing each of the muscles. Do some breathing, do a few minutes of mindfulness, just 10, 15 minutes, and then you're back on track again. So very important, if you can, to rest in the day. It's a lovely story about John Wesley, the famous theologian, in about the 1790 something. He apparently was one of 19 children. I think he was about number 15. And all the children knew that if they walked into the kitchen and saw their mother and she had her apron over her head, it meant that she was having her time with God. In other words, she was having her rest time. So it's really important to make time for rest if you can. Okay, so to finish, what is life like at the bottom of the hill? So if Luminitra, if you could put that wee diagram up for me. There we go. No, just the next one. That one, yeah. Can you see these three circles? And can everyone see the heart shape in the middle of the circle? The circles represent your life, and the hearts in the middle represents your diagnosis, your MS, and your grief. If you look at the first circle, you can see that the heart shape and life itself are very close together. So in other words, perhaps your MS diagnosis and your symptoms, they are what life is at the moment. But look what happens to the second circle when you start accepting your feelings, when you connect with others, when you care for yourself, when you build these into your new normal. Life expands, you become more resilient and empowered to get back on the road. Our lovely MS comedians and many, many others you know are in this third circle. If you notice the grief here, the hearts in the middle don't change their size. That's because you will never stop grieving for your MS diagnosis. That won't change. But what will change is your life will grow around it. If you have relapses, you may revisit the hearts for a while. They will always be there, but you can still have a life. So just one more quote, or one quote to finish up with, if you could put that up, Luminita. My mother didn't say this, but I can certainly hear her say it. I don't want my pain and struggle to make me a victim. I want my battle to make me someone else's hero. Okay, so Luminita or Nicola, shall I hand it back to you?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Absolutely wonderful presentation, Andi. Thank you so much. It brings back, it grounds us a lot, and it reaffirms what's important, actually, that we quite often tend to forget. I just want to tell our participants that they are, if they want to ask you any questions, just put them in the chat box and we'll try to answer to those questions. We've got one comment about your recipe book, the Overcoming MS book. One of our guests here, she's got the book and she says that she's using it most days and the celery soup is amazing.
Okay, great.
So so it's good to know. Thank you for that. Another question, in that grief model, what can you do to actually decrease the size of the heart in the middle?
The heart in the middle, it will never change. It won't change its size.
Okay.
It will always be there. You'll always grieve your diagnosis. And that's why your life will expand around it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful model. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, Luminita, I should probably mention that I'm not a psychologist, I'm a counselor. So you introduced me as a psychologist. I think everyone should know.
I said counselor first, and then
I've gone up in the world.
You are an amazing person, and Andi is one of our volunteers, and she's been helping our members, to deal with all sorts of emotions, and she's always there for us, like she is tonight. Another question is, what impact should I expect from looking for a new job? What can a new employer do to exclude me?
Exclude or include?
Exclude.
Exclude.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure really what that means. I know that some people, when they're first diagnosed, telling their boss at work is something really difficult. There's a lot of fear there. Will I lose my job? Will people laugh at me? Will they notice that I'm limping or whatever? But really good if you can to be upfront with it and just tell whoever you need to. And then they're generally very, very helpful.
So probably honesty is the best
Honesty.
policy.
Yeah
Probably makes everything easier. And if the employer excludes you, as it says here, it's probably not the right place to be employed.
Exactly, Luminita.
I don't know. That's my feeling. We've got some thank yous here, and that's been really, really fabulous. So people saying thank you to you, Andi.
Oh, good.
Tonight. And are there any other questions? Because we still have a little bit of time if people want to ask Andi. How would you recommend, this to implement this breathing technique into everyday life? People should take it slowly, and how long does it take to actually see those benefits and kind of keep the anxiety at bay?
Well, Luminita, we breathe all the time anyway, don't we?
No, that special breathing of yours.
Yeah. So if you could just start by lengthening the breath, particularly pushing out the belly, do a belly breath and be conscious of that, and then raise the diaphragm, expand the rib cage, and just when you're sitting anywhere, that's what I mean. No one need know what you're doing. We can be doing it now and no one would know. So it's a really good tool, something that you can do anytime, anywhere, any place, and no one's going to think anything of it. So yeah, just breathing deeper to start with by pushing out the belly is a good start.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. There's another comment here from a family member. Can you tell us how we can contact other people, communities, to get to know who are also traveling this journey? What I want to strongly recommend to the family member is to get in contact with MS Auckland and with the community advisors team, and just take it from there. We have support groups for people with MS, and we also, the family is more than welcome to attend all these support groups and all the events that we organize, and happy to connect them with relevant groups and services, and everything that's tailored for their needs.
Just one comment there, Luminita. It's really good for the carers to have a completely separate group away from the people with MS, if that's possible, so they've got their own group.
That's a project. It's the logistics are a bit difficult, but it's definitely a project to have a group for the carers or the family members. Family members, some of them don't like to be called carers. They are just the loved ones that share the grief.
Family.
And, so definitely something for us to keep in mind.
I just have a general sort of comment, Andi, and that is that it does seem perhaps people expect once they get an MS diagnosis that that's their challenge to deal with. But, maybe the time of life, or often there are extra things, the loss of a job, the loss of a marriage, and having sort of a big life trauma or life event on top of the MS doesn't seem to be uncommon for some reason, and incredibly hard to manage those multiple things, especially when you know that stress needs to be avoided.
Absolutely, Nicola, and I think this is what I was saying. You've got double whammies, you guys, when you've got a MS, and the families too. You're dealing with MS and you're dealing, of course, with grief as well, and then you've got trauma on top of that. It's huge, which again it's so important to look after ourselves.
I think, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That might take us to the next question, which is very interesting. How to cope with the thought of your world shrinking. I keep canceling things because of my health and worry that I'll stop getting invited places.
This is extremely hard, and this is about grief. You are grieving for a terrible loss. You've lost so much. And as I say, we've all lost people in our lives. We're all old enough to have lost loved ones. Well, loss of your health is huge. And I think perhaps we don't realize how important it is until we actually lose it. And it is like a loved one. You've lost your health. So just be very, very kind to yourself. It's huge. And unfortunately, it's the journey of grief, and we just have to feel the pain in order to get through it, in order for our world to expand around that heart shape. It's hard.
Thank you for that.
no one can take that pain away, sadly.
Yeah. And it's very, very hard to prioritize, you know, when you have so many things that you still want to be involved in, and your health
Oh
does
gosh.
not permit that. And yeah, it's, yeah.
But again, using your self-talk, you know, there's a lot of negative stuff going on, isn't there? So challenge that by comforting yourself. It's okay, there will be better days ahead, or anything that comforts you in the moment. One lovely thing to do, if we've got time, with all the negative stuff going on around you, is just to look at it. We do this with children. So look at it like leaves on a stream. They're floating down the river. So you can see all your grief on top of the leaves and just watch them flow down. So you can watch them. You can't take them away. They are what they are. So you just need to just gently let them go and be very kind to yourself.
That's a beautiful metaphor. Thank you for that, Andi.
Wonderful. I think that looks like the end of the questions, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like this is the end of our session. It was a wonderful presentation. So much to take from it, and yeah, so much to think about. But thank you for, you know, sharing the strategies and the skills with us. So we're able
Thank you, Benita. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in. It's really kind.
No, you're very kind. Thank you for doing that for MS Auckland.
It's such a privilege to work with you guys. You are these community advisors that I have up on a pedestal somewhere.
Oh.
Thank you, Andi. Thank you, Luminita. Yeah, a really super valuable session tonight. I'm sure everybody got something out of it, all of us. Yeah, so thank you again, and thank you to everybody who's come this evening. Of course, if you want to support the society, go to our website and there's the donation page there. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at our future webinars. So thank you, everybody. Pō Marie. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.